Hello, fellow fiends. Welcome to the season 4 finale of Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces. I am your creator and host, Cassiopeia. It's always bittersweet when you end a season because you're like, yay! We've got all the stuff that we wanted to talk about this season, and now we can get to take some time off to create even more content. But then you're sad because you're not going to be recording every week or every couple of days, just to put out those episodes and those bonus episodes. Can't forget about the bonus episodes. But yeah, so I should be back in May. That is my plan. And I'm going to take some time off to find some more creepy, spooky content for you. So it's not all bad. But stay tuned. Make sure you follow along on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, right here on YouTube. Follow along on your favorite podcast listening platform, because maybe I'll pop in here and there with a couple of little bonus snippets and things like that. So I won't be completely gone, just not putting out full episodes every week. Don't forget, if you want to subscribe to the Patreon or if you want to subscribe through Anchor, those actually get you a merchandise discount good in the Wiccan Fae shop at pizzaandpigtails.com. If you want to support without subscribing, I'll go ahead and post the Cash App as well, and that is the little $ COPEIA. So it's the little $COPEIA. Also, if you're interested in doing a paid promotion type thing, ad space on the podcast, whether it be on YouTube or just through Anchor or anything like that, email me at creepycases.spookyspaces@gmail.com and I'll send you over all of the information that I have put together for that. So this episode was supposed to be the bonus that was going to be put out on Tuesday. However, due to some technical difficulties, basically me, I didn't actually get to post the bonus. So I went ahead and kept it for the season finale because it is a crazy story that kind of loops off another crazy story that I told you about last week, which was the Steven Stayner story. And so sorry, you'll see me kind of referencing my notebook because I didn't have time to get everything typed up on the computer. So it might be you'll see me kind of doing this a lot, like, oh, where was I? Oh, where am I? And yeah, so sorry about that. But yeah, so on Friday, I actually told you about Steven Stayner, who was kidnapped as a young boy. He was actually only 7 years old, and he was missing for 7 years. And at 14, he was actually able to escape his captor. He actually ended up building up that courage to get away after his captor, Kenneth Parnell, kidnapped another little boy who was just 5 years old. And Stephen just could not stand to see Timothy White hurt. And so he didn't want to see him go through that same trauma and stress that he did. Now, while the nation just absolutely rejoiced and Stephen was hounded with attention, everyone wanted to know how he was doing because clearly you're gone for 7 years. You go through all this stress and trauma. Of course, everybody's going to be just checking in on you, wanting to know what you went through, what happened, how you feel now. And, but like in the forefront of everything, of the hustle and bustle, who was asking about the other children? Stephen had 4 siblings. He had an older brother named Cary, and then he had an older sister and then 2 younger sisters as well. And now his older brother Cary was happy to have him home. I mean, obviously, that's, to be expected. But he actually began to feel ignored and overshadowed by Stephen's return. And he even told people that he felt neglected by his parents. And, everybody's focus was on Stephen. And so it actually kind of made him just feel unloved and, like I said, kind of ignored and neglected. And now many have asked, could this be what led to the horrific monstrosities that Cary committed when he murdered 4 women, and 3 were murdered at one time or in the same night? And it was near the Yosemite National Park. And if you heard Friday's episode, I'm sure that sounds very familiar to you. So buckle up as I tell you about the creepy details about the case of Cary Stayner, also known as the Yosemite Park Killer. So, Cary Anthony Stayner was born August 13th, 1961, in Merced, California. He was the oldest of 5 kids born to Kay and Delbert Stayner. Kay and Delbert Stayner. Now, he had a younger brother, Steven, and 3 younger sisters. And the family lived in a greenhouse under an elm tree on Bet Street. And this was in a neighborhood of kind of older, lower to middle class families. And he went to school like any normal kid. He swam in his pool like any normal kid. He played baseball. In high school, he actually became the paper's cartoonist, and he was just known as a really nice kid, a nice guy. Now, when Cary was just 11 years old, his younger brother, 7-year-old Steven, was kidnapped by Kenneth Parnell. And this seemed to have a rather heavy impact on Cary, as he felt that being the oldest sibling and being the older brother, he definitely should have been able to protect Steven more. And that actually happens when in my kind of my research and my studies. A lot of times the older sibling usually feels partially responsible that their younger sibling was kidnapped or worse. And because they feel like their protector, they feel they should have been able to help them or keep them safe. And it's kind of sad in a way, just because, like, obviously you can't be with them everywhere. You have other obligations, you have other things, and honestly, things happen. Horrible things. Yes, it is horrible, but at the same time, you can't be there all the time. Now, Cary actually said that every night when he was 11 years old, he would partake in a very personal routine that only he knew about. And he would go outside to the same spot each night, and he would find his lucky star, and he would recite a wish. And it was, "Wherever my little brother is tonight, bring him home safe and sound. Please bring Steven home." Now, 7 years later, that wish was granted. And instead of wishing that night on that star, he thanked it. Now, only it didn't really make Cary as happy as he believed it would to have Steven home. And sure, he was thankful that his little brother was alive and home and safe and sound. But Cary he was actually 18 years old at this point, and he would come to feel even more overshadowed by Steven's return. And he had actually already come to feel kind of ignored and neglected and by the disappearance. And he had become somewhat of a loner. And I mean, I don't want to use the word recluse, but he didn't really go out with a lot of friends or other, like girls, or he didn't spend time a lot with other people. He spent a lot of time alone going fishing, going hunting. He just kind of did his own thing, which there's nothing wrong with that either. I know a lot of people who do a lot of, I don't want to call them loners, because I mean, like, you just enjoy being alone and having kind of the peace of, quiet. um, Now, he had friends, but not very many, and he was your kind of typical shy, rather shrinking violet that just kind of lived in the background. But in 1979, his graduating class actually voted him the most creative student in his graduating class at Merced High School. And most believe that he would actually become a cartoonist or a graphic artist. Um, Except he was also known for being the brother of a kidnapped victim who ended up having a television mini-series, kind of movie of the week made about his life. And this was really the only things that most people knew about Cary. And he seemed to just fade into the background in social situations and not really like living up to any of the glowing predictions that were made for him when he was younger. He actually ended up bouncing from job to job, mostly hauling furniture, installing windows, constructing shower doors. And I mean, not saying those aren't spectacular and amazing professions, but they weren't the famous cartoonist or major graphic artist that a lot of people thought Cary was going to become. Now, when Steven died in a motorcycle accident in 1989, and then Cary's uncle actually died, he was murdered just a year later in 1990. And it sent all of the attention back away from Cary. And once again, back onto Steven and other people, and it made him feel neglected. And I mean, yeah, you're older at this point, but if you've lived your whole life in the shadows and kind of living, um, I guess, runner up to somebody else, it can still take a toll on you as an adult. And it was reported that he actually attempted suicide in 1991. But no one could ever expect the events that would actually come just a decade later. So, Cary lived a rather normal life, even if he spent most of it alone. He claimed to prefer the solitude and he was happy. Now, in 1997, Cary was hired as a handyman at the Cedar Lodge Motel in El Portal, California, just off Highway 140, which is the entrance to Yosemite National Park. And this is actually slightly eerie, as Highway 140 is the exact same road that Kenneth Parnell took Steven, and drove him down as when he kidnapped him. And Cary actually had a very similar profession. He was actually a handyman while Kenneth Parnell was a security night auditor. But they both worked basically in the motels in the same area. So I guess I don't. I don't know how to like really describe it or explain it, but it's a little creepy to me that he would kind of follow in the footsteps of the man who took Steven. And this would actually be where Cary would, well, carry out the horrors that would send the family back into the media yet again. Now, Yosemite National Park is one of the most breathtaking areas in the United States. And with its beautiful waterfalls, sweeping valleys, and giant sequoia trees, it's no wonder that so many people, millions to be exact, just go to visit. In February of 1999, 42-year-old Carol Sund, her 15-year-old daughter Julie, and Julie's friend and foreign exchange student that was staying with them, 16-year-old Silvina Peloso, left their home in Eureka, California on vacation near Yosemite. Now, Silvina was an Argentinian exchange student, and she was staying with the family for 3 months. And her and Julie, Carol's daughter, had become really good friends. And Carol actually wanted to just kind of uh, take Silvina on these great trips, and she wanted to give her awesome, experiences while she was here, take her and, to see as much as she could. And I think that's actually pretty amazing of Carol and Jen's son, because a lot of people, like a lot of your international foreign exchange students, come over and they don't, they're just school or work, and they don't really get to see a lot of what the area that they're in has to offer. So I think it's really cool that Carol and Jen's is Carol's husband. So they flew to San Francisco, where Carol actually rented a 1999 red Pontiac Grand Prix. And they made a stop in Stockton, where Julie was to perform in a cheerleading competition and at the University of the Pacific. And then they made their way to El Portal to spend a few days just relaxing with nature. So Carol Sund and her husband, 43-year-old Jens, owned a realty company, not a rental company, a realty company. And they were hosting Silvina, like I said, for 3 months. And Jens couldn't go on the trip with the three this time because he had business that he had to attend to. And so they kind of turned it into a girls' getaway. And they were actually supposed to be meeting up with Jens right as he was going down to his business meeting. Now, on February 15th, 1999, it was a typical normal day. The ladies hiked into Yosemite on one of the trails, and they spent the day sightseeing. They then had dinner at the little 1950s style diner that's in the motel, and then rented a couple of videos from the service desk to just kind of watch and relax in their room. Now, this was sadly the last time they would be seen alive. Now, Jens and Carol had planned, like I said, for the trio to meet up with him back in San Francisco, where he would pick them up from the airport on his way to Arizona. Now, the ladies would tour the Grand Canyon while he was attending to his business. Now, however, when he arrived at the airport, he didn't find any trace of his wife, any trace of his daughter, or any trace of Silvina. Now, he thought he reached out to her, and when he couldn't get a hold of her, he thought that maybe she and the girls had just flown ahead and decided to just skip the basically the road trip to Arizona. So he figured, okay, I'll try contacting them again later. And after a few more times of reaching out but failing to get a hold of them, he called the motel. Now, they claimed that they had cleaned the room and finding nothing suspicious, no foul play. And it also seemed that the three ladies had checked out in advance, and the room keys were actually left on the desk inside the motel room. Now, Jens became worried because he still couldn't get a hold of Carol or his daughter, and so he called the police. And it turns out that the rental car was also never returned, nor was the rental agreement extended. So police assumed that the trio had wandered off the main paths and got lost just somewhere in the park. And so they began to search the area where they were last seen. Now, I can totally understand that being kind of one of the thing, like that's kind of an assumption, like, okay, well, they were, they went hiking. However, the car, I feel like they would have found the car. But also they were last seen like go like in their hotel room when they are not in the hotel room, but when they ordered the VHS tapes or DVDs or the video. It just said videos. It could have been VHS. It could have been DVDs. It was 1999. I'm not quite sure. It could go either way. Now, for 4 weeks, police, family, and volunteers searched the area in and near Yosemite by every way they could. They used helicopters, they used boats in the lakes, they hiked. Just any way they could be out there, they were out there. And they were trying to find the missing woman, and they were also looking for the car. Now, in a twist of events, Carol's wallet with all of her money, all of her credit cards, her IDs, or her everything turned up in Modesto, California. And so police knew something was really wrong. Now, just a few weeks later, FBI agent James Maddock told the press that the investigators felt almost certain that the women had become victims of violent crimes. Now, due to the discovery of Carol's wallet turning up in Modesto, police and the FBI searched the roads in and out of there. And they spoke to people who may have seen something, but after following over 1,000 leads, nothing turned up. So even after Carol's parents, Francis and Carol, went on Good Morning America to ask for help in locating Carol and the girls, they, once again, nothing came up. Even after offering a reward totaling $300,000, just nothing, no one came forward. Nothing came of any of the leads, and Carol's other children actually couldn't grasp the fact that their mother wasn't coming home. Now, on March 18th, the Sund family's worst nightmare came true when the red Pontiac that Carol had rented was found off of Highway 108 by a hiker. And the car had been set on fire and was almost completely burned out. Now, early the next morning, agents found 2 charred bodies in the trunk, and the remains were so badly burnt that they could only be identified using their dental records. And they were identified as the bodies of Carol Sund and the foreign exchange student Silvina Peloso. Now, a short time later, police received a letter reading, "We had fun with this one." Quote, end quote. "We had fun with this one." And it included a map on where to find the body of Julie Sund. And now it was about an hour from where they had found the car. So when they did find her, her throat had been cut. And police spoke with multiple people, including Cary Stayner, and because he worked at the nearby motel that the women were staying at. Now, the 3 women stayed at the motel, and he was cooperative. He was calm during his interview, and besides an arrest for drugs from 1997, he had basically a clean record. So police never really suspected or named him a suspect. There were 4 men on their radar at this time. 42-year-old Michael Larwick, known to be part of a drug ring with a long criminal record. His half-brother, 32-year-old Eugene Dykes. Who else? 39-year-old Billy Joe Strange, who was an employee that actually worked at the lodge's lounge. And then 56-year-old Daryl Stevens, who was Strange's roommate. But I'm sure you can guess, all of these leads basically led nowhere. Now, months went by with no real progress. And it wasn't, just for lack of trying. It's just there were so many things that led the police in so many different directions that it was just hard to figure out where to look, first of all. Secondly, it was hard to figure out because you had the wallet in Modesto. So do you focus on people in Modesto? But now you have the car over, here in this area in Yosemite. So where do we look? And then you have Julie an hour away. And then do you have one killer? Do you have multiple killers? Was this a gang related murder? Was it just a happenstance? They just had no real direction. But on July 22nd, there was another body found, and it was the decapitated body of Yosemite naturalist 26-year-old Joey Armstrong. And she was found near the cabin that she was living in while working for the Yosemite Institute. And upon police's investigation, they were told of a 1972 blue International Scout parked outside of Joey's cabin. Now, this vehicle was traced back to Cary Stayner, and it finally led to him being basically the lead suspect in the case of Joey Armstrong, that is. Now, he was found staying at Laguna del Sol nudist colony in Wilton, and he actually they're not even sure why. Like, he went and he ran because he was supposed to be, working and staying in the Yosemite area, but he basically ran. So he was arrested and taken into custody for questioning. And during his interrogation, Stayner actually shocked FBI agents when he confessed to not only Joey Armstrong murder, which is what he was being interviewed and questioned on, but he also confessed to the murders of Carol Sund, Julie Sund, and Silvina Peloso. Now, he also laid quite the story of his childhood on them, but we'll get to that. And I just want to, I know I posted the discretion warning at the beginning, but I just want to say that a lot of the details that are coming up in the rest of the video are pretty gruesome. So little ears may not want to continue, or if adult ears want to listen and then decide later on. But I would just say those faint of heart should probably not continue the episode. Now, before he would admit to anything, he told detectives that he actually wanted them to get in touch with a producer to have a movie made of his life. He said that there was a movie made about his brother Steven, and he wanted the same, and he wanted for the world to notice him. Now, that right there should tip you off as he's not all connected. There's definitely something, I don't want to say something wrong with him, but there's definitely some kind of mental issue that just basically, like, he just did this for attention. But 37-year-old Cary Stayner told police and FBI agents that on the night he had been watching the three women as they had dinner and as they rented the movies and as they returned to their room. Now, Carol, Julie, and Silvina went missing, and he knocked on the door, interrupting their movie night. And when they opened it, he claimed that there was a leak that was reported, but that he really needed to fix it because he didn't want it to cause damage. Now, once inside, he pulled a gun on the women, and he said that they were all very cooperative and basically followed his every demand. He ended up bounding and gagging all three of the women, and he actually separated them from one another. And now it was at this time he says that he went on to strangle Carol and Savina to death with a rope. And then he kept Julie away so that she wouldn't have to watch. And as she cowered in the corner, he took the bodies and put them in the trunk of the rental car. Now, he forced Julie into the car, driving them to New Don Pedro Reservoir, pulling just beyond Moccasin Point. And this is actually somewhere that he used to visit a lot when he was younger, and probably as an adult. But this is somewhere that he used to go on family fishing trips, and he would actually visit there a lot while he was growing up. So when they got there, he pulled Julie from the car down a trail and kind of over a rise. So that way, if anybody did pass by, they were completely out of the headlights and out of view. So Cary went on to say that he sexually assaulted her, even though this actually varies, because I've seen reports where it says that he sexually assaulted Sylvina and Julie, but then I've also seen it where he claims that he didn't sexually assault any of his victims because he wanted their deaths to be as quick and painless as possible. Now, after he sexually assaulted her or not, he slit her throat, and the cut was so deep that it almost severed her head from her body. And he left her body there just next to the lake. He then drove the car to another county, and he was planning on actually driving it into a reservoir, but the car got stuck on like a wooden stump, like wedged up over, and so he just left it there. But he left it there, and then he took a cab back to Yosemite. And he claims that he was keeping an eye on the progress of the investigation. And when he found out that they were kind of not so much closing in on him, but when they were kind of getting the information that would kind of drive him, to stay in the area, he went back, he torched the car, he planted Carol's wallet in Modesto, and he actually is the one who sent that note and map so he could make it seem like there were multiple killers. So that would kind of throw police off of the trail. Now, he then told agents about how he just couldn't stop himself, and on July 14th, he spotted 26-year-old Joey Armstrong. And he said that she was packing and loading her car because I guess she was going on a trip to do some stuff for the Yosemite Institute. He said that he just lost control and attacked her. He duct taped her and gagged her, but she fought back, and she was actually able to jump out of the car. But he chased her down, overpowered her, beheaded her, and then left her body and her head by a nearby stream. But I believe her head was found in the stream. Now, when he was telling police officers this, one of them said that he showed no emotion. It was like he was reading the ingredients on a shampoo bottle, just very what they would consider medical. There was just no guilt. There was no remorse. There was just nothing. Just that he was telling this story. Now, in the interview, he told police that he had actually started fantasizing about killing women when he was just 7 years old. And at his trial, Cary's lawyers actually argued that he suffered from mental illness. And they told about how Cary started pulling large chunks of hair out of his head, starting at the age of 2 and like right in between the ages of 2 and 4. And by the time he was 11, he actually had imagined his own mother getting kidnapped and sexually assaulted by multiple men. Now, his thoughts and fantasies actually grew quite darker and darker as he got older, and some of them including forcing women to do things that they didn't want to do. Now, it was revealed that he grew up in a family who had a history of pedophilia, drug abuse, and neuropsychological dysfunction. And his defense attorneys actually ran what is called a position emission tomography scan, and this was performed on him, and it actually found brain mm, abnormalities, sorry, in connection with schizophrenia, psychotic disorder, and obsessive compulsive disorder. And they used this to actually spare him execution. Well, they tried to spare him from execution. But Cary, not only dealing with Steven's disappearance, he was actually molested by his uncle at a young age. And it turns out that he actually knew about his father molesting his sisters. And the father was actually ordered into therapy, so because of the actions he was taking. And so Cary struggled with impotence as well, and this caused him to not have really any kind of relationships with women. And he was teased a lot in high school due to his hair pulling, and he had patches missing in many places on his head. He wore a hat a lot. And this was about the time that his thoughts started getting dark and more sinister and sexual in nature. And he claimed to have been hearing music, like a musical, like notes in his head. He would hear buzzing. He would hear voices. He actually thought that he was receiving messages from the television, and he actually thought that Nostradamus's prediction of the end of the world had come true, and that the end of the world was basically right around the corner. So they also said that when Cary was younger, he had a nervous breakdown, and he actually reached out for help, and just nobody would help him. They told him that it was all in his head, um, or that he was just trying to get attention, and and just nobody helped him. He also would tell people that he didn't really need to be like he just wanted to be loved, and he didn't need to be loved as much as everybody loved Steven, but he just wanted to be noticed. Now, he like I said, he reached out for help and never received it, which I would like to push. If you're anybody, not just your child, but if a family member, a friend, anybody comes to you and says that they need help, help them, because there's a lot of things, events, just situations that could have been prevented in the past if somebody would have just cared to take a minute to listen, or cared to help these persons, these people get help that they need. Now, I mean, it seemed that tragedy just followed Cary and really the whole family everywhere. And it's actually kind of sad, um, because when you have things like this, it's just, you can't blame the family, obviously, but it's just things happen. And it's just really sad because you have these people who are just grieving and grieving and grieving. And today, Cary Stayner, I don't know why they want to come out, Cary's mother won't even really speak about him publicly. So in August of 2002, Cary Stayner was found sane to stand trial, and he was convicted of the 4 murders, and he remains on death row in San Quentin. But due to a law that was passed about capital punishment in 2006, there's been no deaths. However, he is 61 years old now, and he is basically just sitting on death row because he can't get out. He has a no parole clause in his sentence, so he can't get out to hurt anyone. And I think that it's the best place for him, because he himself said that he was going to keep killing unless he was caught or unless he was killed himself. So I think he is in the best place. He's in the place that he needs to be. Hopefully he is getting that help that he's needed since he was a young child. I hope that the families, you never get over it. However, I hope that they have healed as much as they can. And so that is all I have for you on the case of Cary Stayner. And it's just sad when you think about things like this, like things that it stems from one situation and it just snowballs. But on that note, see you next season of Crimes. Creepy Cases and Spooky Spaces with Cassiopeia is a Pizza and Pigtails production. All episodes are researched, written, and edited by yours truly. You can find new episodes every Friday, with bonus episodes coming out every other Tuesday. You can find the podcast on your favorite listening platform, or now you can find it on YouTube as well. Don't forget to follow along on social media, creepycases.spookyspaces, for all future news, updates, and maybe some content that you won't find on the podcast. Also, be sure to subscribe so you can get access to bonus content, early access to content, and a couple of little thank you swag. If you'd like to contact me about appearing on a future episode, maybe you would like to suggest your own creepy case or spooky space, or maybe you'd also like to reach out about ad space, you can reach me directly at creepycases.spookyspaces@gmail.com, or feel free to reach out through those social media platforms as well. And, as always, see you next crime.